Imagine waking up one morning and suddenly feeling an uncontrollable urge to dance. You try to stop. You can't. Your feet keep moving. Hours pass. Your body becomes exhausted, but the dancing continues. Now imagine looking around and discovering that you're not alone. One person is dancing. Then 10. Then dozens. And eventually, hundreds. This sounds like something from a horror movie, but according to historical accounts, something remarkably similar happened in the city of Strasbourg in 1518. People danced uncontrollably in the streets. Some reportedly continued for days. And authorities didn't know how to stop it. This is the bizarre story of the dancing plague of 1518. Strasbourg. The year was 1518. Strasbourg was a busy city in the region of Alsace, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. But life wasn't easy. The population had experienced disease, poverty, food shortages, and social tension. For ordinary people, hunger and illness were constant threats. And beneath the surface of everyday life was something else: fear. People in medieval Europe lived in a world where disease could appear suddenly and death was often difficult to explain. Religious beliefs were deeply connected to everyday life. People searched for supernatural explanations when strange things happened. And then, during the summer of 1518, something extremely strange happened. According to historical accounts, a woman known as Frau Troffea walked into the streets of Strasbourg and began dancing. There was apparently no music. No festival. No celebration. She simply started moving. And she wouldn't stop. The dancing spreads. At first, people may have thought she was simply behaving strangely. But the situation became much more disturbing when other people began doing the same thing. Within days, dozens of people were reportedly dancing. The number continued to grow. Historical sources describe a strange scene unfolding in the streets of Strasbourg. People moved uncontrollably. Some appeared unable to stop. They danced in public squares and along the streets while exhausted spectators watched. And this wasn't simply a few minutes of dancing. Some accounts claimed that certain individuals continued for days. Imagine the physical exhaustion. Imagine your muscles screaming for rest while your body refuses to stop moving. Imagine collapsing from exhaustion and then getting back up and continuing. The city had never seen anything like it. And nobody knew what was causing it. The authorities make a terrible decision. Today, if hundreds of people suddenly developed the same unexplained symptoms, doctors would investigate immediately. But in 1518, medicine was very different. The authorities sought explanations based on the medical knowledge of their time. And according to historical accounts, some officials eventually came to believe that the dancers needed to keep dancing in order to recover. Yes. The proposed solution was essentially more dancing. Authorities reportedly created spaces where people could dance. They even brought in musicians and hired performers to keep the dancers moving. A special stage was reportedly constructed. Some sources describe a bizarre scene in which musicians played while exhausted people continued dancing. But instead of solving the problem, the situation may have made it worse. More people reportedly joined the dancing. The authorities had unintentionally created an environment in which the strange behavior could continue. And soon, the city was facing an unprecedented crisis. When dancing became deadly. The most frightening accounts claim that some dancers eventually collapsed from exhaustion. Some may have suffered injuries. And later accounts have even claimed that people died. However, historians debate exactly how many deaths occurred and how reliable these reports are. This is important because the dancing plague has become surrounded by legends over the centuries. Some popular stories exaggerate what happened. Others repeat claims that cannot be firmly established from surviving evidence. But even after separating fact from legend, something extraordinary appears to have happened. A large number of people in Strasbourg apparently experienced an unusual episode of uncontrollable dancing. And the question remains: why? Theories. Hundreds of years later, historians and scientists still debate the explanation. One theory involves ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that can grow on grains such as rye. Certain forms of ergot poisoning can cause hallucinations, spasms, and other neurological symptoms. Because medieval people sometimes depended heavily on grain, some researchers have suggested contaminated food as a possible explanation. But there is a problem. Ergot poisoning doesn't neatly explain all the details associated with the dancing plague. So another explanation has become more influential. It is called mass psychogenic illness. In simple terms, This is when psychological stress and social influence can produce real physical symptoms in groups of people. The symptoms are not necessarily fake. The people experiencing them can genuinely feel unable to control their bodies. And Strasbourg in 1518 may have been an environment where such an event could occur. The population was living through difficult conditions. There was hunger. There was disease. There was poverty. There was religious fear. And there was enormous psychological stress. If one person suddenly displayed bizarre behavior, others might interpret it through the beliefs of their society. Fear and expectation could then spread through the community. And before anyone understood what was happening, dozens, or even hundreds of people might be caught in the same phenomenon. Another possibility is that several factors came together. Stress, belief, social influence, illness, and the psychological environment of the time. Rather than one simple cause, the dancing plague may have been the result of a complicated combination of circumstances. Why did it stop? Perhaps the strangest part of the story is that the dancing eventually stopped. The phenomenon did not continue forever. As the weeks passed, the number of dancers reportedly declined. Authorities changed their approach. Religious measures were reportedly introduced. Some dancers were taken to religious sites associated with healing. Eventually, the strange episode faded away. But nobody in Strasbourg could simply forget what had happened. For the people who witnessed it, the memory must have been extraordinary. A city had experienced an event that seemed impossible to explain. And centuries later, historians are still trying to understand it. Fact or legend? So how much of the story is actually true? That's where things become complicated. Historical records do exist describing an outbreak of dancing in Strasbourg in 1518. But many of the dramatic details repeated online today come from later interpretations, secondary accounts, or uncertain sources. The exact number of dancers is disputed. The exact number of deaths is also uncertain. And there is no universally accepted explanation for what happened. That uncertainty is precisely what makes the story so fascinating. We know something strange happened. But we don't completely understand why. Was it poisoning? Psychological stress? Mass psychogenic illness? Religious fear? Or something historians haven't fully identified? The answer may never be completely known. More than 500 years have passed since the streets of Strasbourg reportedly filled with people who couldn't stop dancing. Today, we have advanced medicine, neuroscience, psychology, and technology. Yet the dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's strangest mysteries. It reminds us that the human mind and body can sometimes behave in ways that challenge our understanding. And perhaps the most disturbing question isn't simply, why did they dance? It's this. What would happen if something like this began today? One person starts moving. Another joins. Then another. And suddenly, an entire crowd is doing something nobody can explain. The dancing plague of 1518 may have happened more than 5 centuries ago. But its mystery still hasn't stopped moving. This is Infinity Pulse. Stories beyond the ordinary.